I'm gonna go to China and I'm gonna get those jobs from China and bring them back here to America. For what? So iPhones can be $9,000?
Actually, Dave Chappelle, the figure is actually closer to $30,000. But that's not going to stop the US government from diving into the world's most hilariously unhinged trade war.
There will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight.
We're going to tariff our pharmaceuticals, and once we do that, they're going to come rushing back into our country.
Apparently, the smart guys in Washington have decided that now, at the sunset of the great American empire, they're going to double down on an economic policy that sells this chimera to their base of economically disenfranchised, pissed off, patriotic, non-DEI salts of the earth.
They took our job! They took your job!
According to these wise men, the ongoing trade war will result in factories and jobs coming back from China to the US, leading to the reindustrialization of the American heartland using AI and automation.
Automated factories, but the key is who's going to build the factories, who's going to operate the factories, who's going to make them work. Great American work.
Yeah, it's total bullshit. The reality of the situation, which you can see on your screen right now, was outlined by Steve Jobs many years ago. China is an economy built around building things faster, cheaper, and better than anyone else, while the US imperial economy is built around consuming the fruits of other people's work. That is a fundamental philosophical gap that tariffs cannot bridge. Through the course of this tariff war, we've learned two important things about the US empire and the economic system it runs. First, that contrary to everything we were taught, the empire, in fact, was never particularly good at wealth creation or innovation or creativity or efficiency. What it has been good at is kneecapping the rest of the world, so that with the wealth extracted from being the premier global parasite economy, there's been a one-eyed king in the land of the blind for centuries. But China's economic rise has changed everything.
Economically, the game is over. The Chinese, if not already a wealthier economic unit than we are, which they probably are, will be within a few years.
And the empire suddenly cannot use any of that self-acclaimed entrepreneurial skill, innovation, creativity, or efficiency to compete with China. All it can do, in fact, is pull this Hail Mary move where it slaps punitive tariffs on the rest of the world, hoping that doing so will restore it to the #1 spot by wrecking everyone else's economies, and all the while blaming Nigeria's government not allowing imports of American fruit, juice, and beef. There's been no...
All right, Shalom. It's the brother Nahalia from the GMS Orlando camp. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yashar Allah, and the sincere sight this word and believe in this word, and to the Aquath who will believe in this word, in all truth and in sincerity. This is Isaiah chapter 14, and I'll start at verse 5. And it says, "The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger, is persecuted, and none hindereth. The whole earth is at rest and is quiet, they break forth into singing. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, Since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for thee, to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, Art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us?" I want to go into a lesson through the Spirit based on the video you just saw, explaining the tariffs, all right, and the situation that Babylon, the daughter of Babylon, Mystery Babylon as it's referred to, which is America, is in, all right, at this current state with the tariffs. All right, now this guy did a great job of explaining, you know, a very easy to digest version of what's going on. All right. And that's why I like this video out of all the ones that I looked at concerning the tariffs and the geopolitical situation. This is Isaiah 33:1. It says, "Woe to thee that spoilest, and thou was not spoiled, and dealest treacherously, and they dealt not treacherously with thee. When thou shalt cease to spoil, thou shalt be spoiled. And when thou shalt make an end to deal treacherously, they shall deal treacherously with thee." All right. And one thing that I don't think this guy pointed out in his video is that, you know, basically the tariffs are making Babylon the Great, which is America, a bunch of enemies. All right. Even amongst its own allies. All right. And this is according to prophecy. We know according to prophecy, all right, the NATO and EU allies are going to turn against America. All right. And the disagreements have already started when you deal with the Ukraine conflict. All right. the Russian sanctions, all right, the freezing of the Russian accounts, when you dealt with the beginning of the Ukrainian-Russian conflict, that squeezed the European economies and really shrunk it and destroyed it, not completely, but a great degree. All right. And that was because of their allegiance to the horde that sitteth upon many waters, which is America. Now you fast forward to April the 9th, all right, 2025, and there's another provocation, and it's through these tariffs. All right, because Trump didn't just put tariffs on China. He also put tariffs on the European nations as well. All right. And like this guy explained, this is a desperate attempt to regain power. All right. China is now beginning to move to the forefront. And this is why the BRICS nations come into play. And they're a very important role in what it will become World War III. All right. Now, to land back the point of the Allies turning, this is Revelation 17. And I'm going to start at, let's start up and then I'll jump down. Revelation 17 and 1. And it says, there came up one of the seven angels which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters. And that whore that sitteth upon many waters again is America. All right. Verse 2, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. All right. Verse 3 reads, and so he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet colored beast, full of blasphemies, full of names of blasphemies, having 7 heads and 10 horns. All right. Now, when you deal with the 7 heads and 10 horns, the 7 heads make up the NATO nations and the 10 horns make up the EU nations. Those allies of America have been the vehicle that America has been able to push its influence. All right. And basically dominate using that vehicle. Now, when you deal with the Bretton Woods agreement and the petrodollar agreement, all of these were agreements that were established in past time to maintain America's stronghold over the earth. All right. That world reserve currency status allowed America to go into great debt without feeling the repercussions of that great debt. Nations have now grown wise enough to move around these this world reserve status. And through that, all right, when you deal with China in particular, what America did was a snare unto it. All right, because by sending all those jobs over to China, you allowed China to get their money up. And by them getting their money up, everybody on the planet, all right, concerning nations of people, depend on China. They're the manufacturing hub. All right, now let's go here. This is Obadiah 1 and 2. It says, behold, I have made thee small. I'm start at 1. The vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. All right, and Edom is the so-called white man as a nation of people. But the concentration of their power on a political stage, on a nation stage, is America. That is the spearhead of the power of the so-called white man on earth. All right, it says, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen. Thou art greatly despised. The pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him. So the exportation of all of those jobs, you think about Detroit. It's a perfect example of back then in Detroit, you could have a factory job and pretty much provide for your family. All right. Damn near more than provide for your family. Well, these so-called white people over here that own these companies, all right, they got greedy and they started shipping those jobs over to China because they could make more profits. Well, the Chinese used that to their advantage, and now they got their money up, and now they are they're a factor on the world stage. They're not just your the place you send all the jobs you don't want to have. Now they're a factor on the world stage, and them combined with Russia makes them even more of a factor. This is why those BRICS nations are so important, because there's a confederacy, all right. And at one point, China was at peace with America. You know, they would have tariffs and trade wars, but for the most part, there was peace. But when America recognized China getting to a competitive stage, all right, they started doing adversarial things. But at this point, it's too late. All right, and that's why through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shema Shai, we know that all of this is going to resort to World War III. All right, trade wars more oftentimes than not end up in real wars. All right, historically speaking. All right, this is Revelation 11. Matter of fact, this is Revelation 9 and 12, and it reads, "One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter." All right, and this is dealing with world wars. You had World War I, you had World War II. All right, and now we're entering the ground being laid, if you will, for World War III. All right, this Revelation 11 and 14. The second war is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. All right, and like I said before, through the spirit, historically speaking, a lot of trade wars resulted in real wars. And we know, according to prophecy, World War III will happen. All right, now, one thing that these trade wars are doing, Trump is using this to try to level the playing field and kind of get some of that influence on a world stage back, without realizing that you're just pushing the allies you already have further into the hands of your enemies. Because China is still the manufacturing hub of the planet. And that's not going to change because you throw tariffs. All right, basically doing the tariffs is taxing anybody that doesn't have a company within America that's not manufacturing in America. You're taxing those people. So if they try to bring it in and make money off the American population, they got to pay this high tax. That doesn't mean that they can get around that by just working with each other, theoretically speaking. Now, that's not to say that America isn't a major consumer nation. So it's not like they can afford to just ignore America completely. But when you do tariffs, you're basically saying you can't shop here without paying this tax. But it doesn't prevent these other nations from working with each other. All right. And this is why we know through the spirit that war is on the horizon. All right. Because, again, what did China do? They did reciprocal tariffs, which turned this into a trade war. They didn't just lay down. All right. And this goes back to Isaiah 14. And I'm going to jump back to verse 9. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? And this is why they're starting to what? They're starting to look at America as a peer, you know, low key. They really starting to look down on America. All right. This is why they feel so bold to just say, you know what? All right, we're going to go tit for tat then. Let's do it. We're going tit for tat. And it's beautiful through the spirit because we know, according to prophecy, where everything is headed. All right. Even if this trade war dies down, even if this tariff situation dies down, the groundwork is being laid. The Lord does these small details that amount to big moves in prophecy. All right. This is Revelation 3 and 1. It says, for behold, in those days and in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Yahweh-Shaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So it's the will of the Lord to gather these nations for war. All right. As a matter of fact, I'm going to jump down to verse 9. Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war. Wake up the mighty men. Let all the men of war draw near. Let them come up. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say, I am strong. All right. And this is what's happening. All right. China, when you look at them, they use the money that they were making from not just making a lot of products that they put into America, but globally, they're one of the manufacturing hubs, meaning other countries use China for the same purposes, to make things faster and cheaper. Well, they've used that to their advantage, and one of those advantages is building up their military. And this, thus saith the Lord, he said, what? Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. As a matter of fact, let's go here and get it in the NLT. Joel 3:9, and it reads, say to the nations far and wide, get ready for war. Call out your best warriors. Let all your fighting men advance for the attack. All right. And trade wars are provocations. This is why a lot of trade wars end in real wars, in kinetic warfare. All right. Meaning actual physical fighting. And all of this is laying the groundwork. See, we know, according to prophecy, the allies of America are going to turn against her. You know, going into Revelation 17, and I'll go back to that. But we also know that the adversaries, those who are already against America, all right, are going to also rain down fire and brimstone via those ICBM missiles. All right. And that is the end goal. All of this is just a lead up and the build up to it. All right. This Revelation 17. And I'll start at 15. And the reason he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest, where the horse sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. And just listen to some of the European leaders. All right, if you type in the European leaders' response to the tariffs, you can see that they're increasingly getting agitated, man. You know, that's why it's beautiful that the Lord allowed Trump to have another term, because we're going to see a lot of interesting things. But we ultimately know, according to prophecy, where everything is headed. Verse 17 reads, for the Most High hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of Yahweh Shai shall be fulfilled. All right. And now this is how we know that we're close to the end. All right. Because at one point, these nations just laid down. All right. America would speak and everybody would say, they wouldn't say a word, or America would say jump and they'd say how high. Now they're starting to pick their heads up. They're starting to look around and say, come on, man, let's just jump them. Like on Friday, when they was plotting on Depot, they was like, man, let's just jump them. Because everybody's tired of the bullying. All right, the sanctions, the tariffs, all right, the proxy warfare. This is why, you know, I mentioned, I read Isaiah 33, you've dealt treacherously. And the whole world knew it, you know, and the world, having the world reserve currency and being able to rule the nations with anger, with the continual stroke. This is an example of that. The whole world economy is in shambles. All right, is being shocked at this point because of these tariffs. Because it's not just China. All right, it's the American allies and the neutral countries. And when you do some of the research on it, it's their effort to balance it out, to make the tariffs so high that the nation's got to come to America and renegotiate, so America can try to get a better deal for the debt that they're already in, and a better trade deal amongst these nations on a nation by nation basis. So this is like an effort to regain power, and it's obvious to those who have the understanding of geopolitics, but we understand it through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shai, because we know ultimately where this is all heading. All right, it's all heading to an actual war. That's why you're seeing news articles about the preparation for war. You know, it's not a game. It's not an accident. The Lord is going to allow these nations to come together to fight. All right. This is Isaiah chapter 46 and verse 9. Remember this and show yourselves men. Bring it again to mind, O ye transgressors. Remember the former things of old, for I am power and there is none else. I am power and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand and I will do all my pleasure. And according to the will of the Lord, all right, World War III is going to play out. And remember what the Lord said in Joel, the 3rd chapter. It was for the sake of Israel. All right, the Lord's going to have vengeance on these nations because all of these nations profited from the Israelites going into captivity. All right, even now, in some ghetto across America where Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans reside, you can find a diverse number of nations with stores and shops in so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American neighborhoods making money. So everybody got a chance to profit off the downfall of Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who are the Israelites. Well, the Lord said for their sake, all right, he's gathering these nations to fight and destroy them ultimately. This is Joel 3 and 2. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Yahweh-Shaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And you got to remember, this goes back to that confederacy, right? There was a confederacy made against us as a nation of people. And now we're witnessing that confederacy fall apart. You know, they conspired to take down the Israelites, and now they're fighting amongst each other over what they've stolen. With the number one culprit being Esau. He made a deal with all these nations. He's the head of the confederacy, if you will, of all these nations. And the moment they stole and brought Israel down, they begin to steal from the other nations. So much so to now they're resorting to stealing from each other. All right, this is Psalms 83 and 1. Keep not thou silence, O Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. Hold not thy peace and be not still, O power. For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. They have taken crafty counsel against thy people and consulted against thy hidden ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab, all right, and the Hagareans, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Ashur also is joined with them. They have hope in the children of Lot, Salah. All right, so Edom, the so-called white man, Ishmael, the so-called Arabs, Moab, the so-called Chinese, all right, Ammon, the so-called Japanese, Amalek, all right, the chief house of Edom, all right, the Philistines going into the Hamites. All these nations had a hand in the fall of you Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, if not during the transatlantic slave trade, they're definitely capitalizing off of selling Jake greasy, alleged orange chicken in Jake neighborhoods. All right, and making money off of Jake by destroying them with that diet. Well, the Lord says he's against all of them. And now we're witnessing this tabernacle that was put together. For example, Edom and Moab. All right, that's the so-called white man and the Chinese. They were confederate against us. And now the Lord is breaking up their covenant. All right, breaking up their bond. And it's beautiful. Call Allah Bashem Yahushai. This is Matthew 12 and 26. I'll start at 25. And Yahushai knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? All right, so they're all divided against themselves. The so-called white man as a nation of people are completely divided and broken. But going back to that confederacy in Psalms the 83rd chapter, that is completely shattered. Going into Revelation the 17th chapter, when you deal with the allies of the whore, which is America, they're beginning to be even more divided than they already were. And the Lord is putting all these pieces together, all right, to bring about prophecy. With one of the major prophecies being a world war, a war on the world stage. Now, we know before that war happens, the MOTB is going to be made mandatory. But these are those pieces that the Lord's putting together. All right. So you can pretty much see it coming. All right. If you have the eye solve to see it. All right. So Lord willing, this was edifying. I just want to speak to that through the Spirit. You know, the tariffs have been a big talk in the news this week. And we know, according to the spirit of prophecy and the will of the Heavenly Father, that it will result in war. All right. It may not be the trade war itself in this tariff situation itself, but all of these moves are incremental, gradual to that final point of breaking off into the world war, the global war. All right. So, matter of fact, I want to get one more. All right. Because China has become a major factor on the world stage, and there's no accident. That's no accident. All right. They basically taken the same blueprint the so-called white man in America used. They took that blueprint and they applied it. That's why you can't really be mad at those. You can't really be mad at the Moabites because they're using the plan that America did. America reigned with this plan for years. The debt slavery that they're doing in Africa. Who did they get that from? Economic hitmen. Who did they get that from? They got that from the Americans. So all they did was apply what the Americans have done across the planet. And they used those jobs that America sent them to build their money up. All right. This is 2nd Esdras 15:46. And thou, Asia, that art partaker of the hope of Babylon and art the glory of her person, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. Thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works, her works and inventions. Therefore saith the Most High, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death. And the glory of thy power shall be dried up as a flower. The heat shall arise that is sent over thee. All right. So the scriptures say that thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. And all of the tactics that the Chinese have used, they've really learned from the Americans. They learned from the Edomites in America. Economic hitmen, all right, proxies, all right, dealing with the Silk Road and trying to create this highway across the planet to get all of those manufactured goods to these places more efficiently. Where are they getting that? Where did they get that from? They got all of that blueprint from Babylon. All right. That's why it says thou art partaker of the hope of Babylon. Everything these Americans is damn near like the so-called Chinese are doing the American blueprint better than the Americans. The Moabites are doing it damn near better than the Edomites in America. But it's all for that provocation, because ultimately the Lord's going to use these agitations to bring forth war, man. All right. So Lord willing, this was edifying with that. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rokah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are the elders of Yasher Allah, and a sincere salutation to all Yuakim, who are preaching this word and believing this word, and to the Akwath, who are believing this word and all truth and in sincerity.